Hi, it's Marcus. I'm going to go into a video about how to get started and paint or skin your Caterham 7 files. Not going to spend a lot of time on the really simple stuff. We'll skim over that and we'll spend more time on the more complex stuff, so this video isn't too long. First thing you need to do is go and get a copy of Paintnet if you don't already have a layered 2D paint program. The way to do this is to go to getpaint.net. It's a really ugly website. Go to the download page. I'm on now. Ignore all of the adverts, and you want to be getting hold of the latest copy. In this case, at this time, May 2020, it's 4.2.11, and download the free version of Paint.net here. That's step one, over and done with as soon as that's installed. I'm not going to walk through the installer. I think everyone knows how to do that. Step two is that we need to be able to open a PSD or a paint shop file. And to be able to do that, we need to be able to get a PSD converter for Paint.net. So the next thing that you need to do is go to a website called psdplugin.com. PSD plugin, again, a fairly ugly website, but there's an option here to download the PSD plugin, and it gives you some instructions on installing and what you need to do. It's really straightforward. It's just a case of installing, and then if you have Paint.net open, restart it, and then suddenly you have the PSD file type plugin installed. So that's the first step, 2 steps done very quickly. Now let's move on to the next. So the next thing you need to do is download the templates for reskinning the Caterham mods. The Caterham 420R race car and the Caterham Academy race car are very similar in terms of the method, just slightly different skins, of course, as you know. But you need to go to racedepartment.com. And then go to the download section and search for Caterham 420R. There are a couple of pages. This is the page you're looking for, Caterham 420R race/R300, currently at version or revision 0.7. If you scroll down a little bit on this page, you get very quickly to a template and 2020 decals link. Click on that. And it immediately downloads an archive file in 7Z format. Most of us know how to open those. If you don't, then WinZip or 7Zip or some other kind of unzipping extraction tool will do the trick. I'm just going to open that and show you what that looks like. You can see that we have 5 files inside of this folder. Just remember that this caught me out for a while. The very top file is called 420 Race Body 2020 PSD. Assetto Corsa is expecting a file just called 420 Race Body. So the moment that you extract these as your base template to start from, I would recommend renaming and removing 2020 from that PSD file name, and then the rest will work smoothly going forward. So this is the set of files you need to extract to your desktop. I've already done that, and that's where you'll be starting to work from as a base template for your designs. Let's move on to the next step. Okay, so now on to the exciting bit. Basically, we're going to be starting to use Paint.net. For me, this was the first time I'd used this application ever, and I'm rusty. So 20 years since I last played around with layered graphics tools. So it took a little bit of time for me to get my head around this. So I'll help those that haven't done that with a couple of gotchas, and hopefully try and make some of this stuff seem quite simple, because it's not that complex. It's just a different dialect and language to business apps that we're used to, perhaps. Okay, so Paint.net is open now, and the first thing I'm going to do is go to File, Open. And I have this base template here. I've called it 420 PSD's base template. I'm not going to open that. Just from the open dialog, I'm just going to go right-click copy and then right-click paste in space. I'm going to rename that as imagine you'd rename this as your car name, but I'm just going to call this 420 test, something like that. And that means that I haven't damaged or changed or modified any of the layers in base template. I can keep coming back to base template, and I can now play around in the test folder. So I'm going to open up the test folder, and these are the 5 files that we want. If you're opening them from inside of Paint.net, you can multi-select all 5 and then click on Open, and they all pop open along the top of the screen. These are each of the different image files that we're looking at here. There's a small icon that shows which one we're working on. In my case, it's opened up to the nameplate and the numbers for the sides of the car, and there's a mixture of different files here. The next one along is actually the decal set, the standard decal set. It doesn't look like it at the moment, and I'll show you what happens there. The next one along is the pads that are the tape, the foam and tape pads that go around the roll cage. The next file along is the roll cage itself, and the final file here is the body of the actual car. So these are the files that we're going to play with, and you can make magic happen with this, and these 5 files is pretty much all you need to do. So let's have a look at this. There are many different layers, and the way layers work is that obviously the ones on the top are higher priority than the ones below, and generally speaking they're ones that would show in the layer above, but each layer also has a layer property which might have a multiply effect, for example, with layers underneath. So this isn't a base template, because people have been probably messing with this a little bit. There are some interesting layers and layer names, but some of the more important ones. So eRHD is the alpha output layer, and that's really has all of the shadows and all of the detail of the car. If I was to start to turn off, which is basically deselecting all of the other, literally come down here and tick off these. And the way to work out what is going on is to tick and untick, fiddle around with these check marks, and just understand what each one of them is potentially doing. But I've basically now removed everything apart from the one tick box that is in eRHD, and you can see what I've got is a 2-dimension flattened view of a Caterham 420 race car, but actually there's some shadow detail here, and it's really important that we don't lose the shadow detail as we're doing our painting. Also, as luck would have it, which is quite nice, that whoever saved this out, saved this particular example out with some stripes and a little bit of detail here. So again, ticking some of these back on will help us see that. The one that blocks everything is this black color copy. Whoever's created this, they were obviously just creating a full black car. But if you can see the multiply effect with the shadow layer, the AO layer is still coming through. So it's not fully black depending on how the light is shining on the car. So this is a great example of how to just paint a block color car. You can pick any color that you want and just apply a fill, a paint bucket fill over, and provided that you have the AO file at the top, the alpha file at the top, you'll be able to get this transparency type of effect and the shadow effects in the car. And although it looks incredibly odd right now, that would produce a perfect black gloss Caterham with no details on it at all if you just use this single file. And if you're in that layer, this is the important thing, select the layer that you're working in, because your painting will only impact that layer, and then the impact on everything else is dependent upon the layer properties. So if I did want a bright red Caterham, I could come to the fill bucket here, I could go and pick bright red from the color wheel as my primary color, I could come over on the black color copy too and paint red fully over it. And now I've got, and it's easier to see with red actually, now I've got a perfect red, like postbox red Caterham skin, and that would be would perfectly acceptable for some people if you just want to have a basic coloured car. I'll deselect that. And also, when you're choosing to output, you need to make sure that you've got the right layers selected, because in effect the output will be a flattened 1-layer output file based on all of the layers that are selected at the point of output. So let me just have a look at some of these other, I'm going to tick some of these back on again. If you're not seeing an effect, then leave it, because there will be some minor effect and it's worthwhile keeping it. Somebody here has done a previous layer here called layer 74, which is sort of side stripes in the sort of the Caterham F1 kind of side stripe kind of painting. This little area here is the boot, the back of the car around the cage, and this is the top boot lid in effect. And then you've got the left side at the very top and the right side at the very bottom. And these have now got red stripes on if you wanted to use layer 74. I don't in this case. Layer group 14 is not doing anything particular. Stripes that you think should be doing something and they aren't. We've got another part of layer 74, which is the colouring of the passenger aluminium surface, and also making sure that the stripes, if you had the other layer 74 on, also go up from the side panel. Let me just put the other layer 74 on. This is the side panel stripe, but this is the stripe around the windscreen kind of frame. So in effect, this part of stripe here, where my cursor is, joins up with this little bit here. So you've got to do a little bit of investigative thinking about what is that body part. For a while, myself and James were joking about this. We thought they've brought everything and the kitchen sink in here now. It looks like there's a sink here. That's actually the oval shape that is wrapped around the center mirror. So if you want a white one, then leave it white like that. If you want a black one or a carbon one, then do something that's more of a grey kind of colour. So it's not necessarily that each of these parts is scaled to the other parts. The program recreates this and handles that scaling per individual part. So some things look quite odd. Why do I have the kitchen sink? It's simply the rear view mirror. These are the front wings, as you can see here, and parts of the side panels, and obviously the bonnets and other bits that go around the front of the car. This is the nose cone. Okay, so let's turn layer 74 off again. What else have we got here? So line sensor copy 3 and 2 are pretty useful to have as well, and stripe sensor. Let me just see where we're up to. So those things are not doing anything particular. And now we've got 2 thin blue pinstripes, a red sensor stripe, and that's another user who's done something. That's not doing anything. And that's finally the wireframe here is the sort of the 3D interpretation really of how these parts are going to be stretched and curved around in terms of the model itself and the car model. Okay, so we can turn that off. So this is what we have to play with. And so if we suddenly wanted to have a red car with a white stripe, then how would we do that? And I'm not going to go into much more detail than that, because the rest you can play with yourself as you get used to the program. Let's say I want a red car with a white stripe and red wing mirrors with black wheel arches. So that's already getting relatively complicated. So first of all, I have to play around and think about where these things are. So stripe sensor, that's not that one. Line sensor copy, it's this one here. So provided I'm on this layer here, I can then take a fill color. I can switch these over and make the primary white, and I can block fill because I'm only on that layer. The previous red stripe. I could come down and go, well, I know I want it to be totally red. I'm going to turn the block color back on again. So now I've got a red car with a white stripe down the bonnet and the front nose cone. I could do a stripe on this piece here, and I might also want to add my own groups in here. So provided you put them where you think they should go in terms of the logical sequence, you can add a new layer. Let me add one now and call it boot stripe, and hit the OK button. So I could shift that up to somewhere near the sort of the top end in terms of where I want the layers to be, provided it's underneath the multiply AORHD. I can then come back to my line sensor copy 2, which is the main stripe. By the way, you can rename these if you want to. Main bonnet stripe, for example, pin stripe. Okay. So my main bonnet stripe, the way I would do this is I would take the selection tool. I might zoom in a little bit first of all, and I'm going to take a small selection of the white stripe just to get the same width right, basically. So I'm taking stripe, I'm taking out enough to cover the boot lid. I'm hitting edit, copy here. I'm coming up to my new boot stripe layer. I'm immediately hitting edit and paste. So I've now got a white stripe pasted on top of itself. Whoops. Grab it with this cursor here, and I'm not on anything other than the boot stripe layer. So I'm then going to come down to here. I'm going to get this centered. You can spend more time doing this with the rulers and laying things out. I'm going to be incredibly rough here. And then just paste that there. And so that's the first step of joining up a boot stripe all of the way across from the bonnet to the boot. And likewise, you can do the same thing by copying and pasting the pinstripes as well, but I'm not going to bother for this example. I might rename boot stripe and call it boot stripe and mirrors in white. And then I'm still underneath the AO layer here. What I'm going to do now, these are the two mirrors, although they look very big, these are the side mirrors, it's fairly obvious. I'm just going to use the lasso select tool, provided I cover the bit that is the mirror. The rest of this background is just scrap, is not being used. So I can kind of draw a rough shape around here that's over the edges of that particular shape, and then that will be where I want to do my painting, provided I'm on the right layer. I'm going to hit the control button to then add into the selections a second selection. So I've now got both mirrors selected using the lasso tool. I'll leave the lasso tool on, go to paint bucket, white is my primary color, paint and paint. So I don't care about the background, it's a bit messy, it doesn't matter at all. I've now got the AO shadow layers coming through, and I've got white white mirrors. Control D to deselect is a good trick to use. And then what we'll do is we'll finish off by painting the wheels. Again, I'm quite happy on this upper layer here, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to lasso select around the wheel arches and go off here. If there's another part that's close, then try and stay really tight so you're not randomly painting some of the bit that you don't know where it is. That colour will then crop up somewhere randomly, something neat round there, randomly on your model. Okay, and I'm going to switch back. Actually, I'm not going to do full black. I'm going to do a kind of like a fake carbon effect, but it's still just a plain color. I'm not getting messy with textures. There are effects and textures that you can use. I'm still checking that I'm on the correct layer, and I'm going to paint over the two wheel arches in grey. Job done. So saving this out for the very first time, remember we opened a PSD, it will save out as a Paint.net file, which is a different file format, and that's the file that you'd want to use again and again if you're coming to edit and make changes. You can stay away from the PSD file once you've done that. I'm going to just show you briefly each of these other files and how to handle them, and then we'll move on and create our red and white car as it is right now. So the second thing here, the second image that I'm showing here is the chassis cage. I struggled with this for a while. It's because somebody's just painted flat red over layer 2. If you take layer 2 off, you can see these are all of the cage components that go to make the roll cage. And really, there's a couple of different ways of doing this. But if you double click on background, you can see its blend mode is normal. You could bring this up and then make that blend mode multiply, and then your red, when you turn it back on, in effect is how it should be. That was what I would do. You don't need any of these other layers. So I've now got a red roll cage with the background in multiply, which means that it kind of comes through. If you do it the other way around, obviously red isn't multiply, the background is multiplying down. So just think about where you are in terms of the order of the layers, and there is no right or wrong way of doing this. It's just about fiddling with normal modes, and multiply mode are the two things. So if my red car, it's mainly red, I want a white roll cage and red padding. Let's say we'll do that. Then I'm on the right layer for the color. I'm in the paint pot. I'm going to switch back to black and white and make white my primary color, and literally just paint over. I have now a white roll cage. Hit the save button. It's saving the Paint.net file, and then move on to the next. This is randomly quite easy because it's already red. You get the idea. There's a layer which has got the tape on, which is blend mode multiply. You can change the opacity and have a play around with this if you want to show less duct tape or have a smoother kind of look and feel, but that's what this is trying to recreate, that kind of look. My layer 7 is already red, so we'll move on. Now we've got the sponsor decals, and this again somebody's been fiddling with here, so there are some layers that you just don't need, so it's about deselecting these. So deselect everything until you get down to here. which is the 2020 Decal pack. This is a black version. You could change the word Caterham here to white. There are white versions around if you just wanted to start from an existing file. I would just get to the point where it looks like this, and then that will save out and work perfectly. Final thing to do is then to apply your race number and your race name. This is fairly straightforward, but it's about trying to get the font and the look to be as accurate and close as possible. I don't have this font installed. I spent ages trying to find a font that has this sort of half curled down for the number 2, but I got close with a font which is acceptable, really. So again, this is layers. We have a layer for each of the different numbers. There's someone who's put a 513 in there, so I can highlight that layer and hit the delete button at the bottom and it's gone. So it's really about editing the layers here to be different numbers. So I will double click on 12 and make it 72. That's the number I'm going to change to. Double click on this 12 and make it 72. I'm going to use my name instead of John Doe here and just call it Marcus Adams. And then there's a flag example here, which is a Scottish Chris Hoy. So if you wanted to play around with flags, then there isn't an English flag here particularly, or even a Union Jack, but there is a Scottish flag example here if you wanted to. I just haven't bothered. Okay, so 72 first of all. How do we get rid of the 12? Well, we're on the right layer. Make sure we're on the right layer. Grab a square selection tool, drag around the 12, and hit the delete key on your keyboard. Gone. I'll leave this 12 here so we can roughly see the difference in font. I picked 72 because it's got a number 2 in it as well. And I want to insert text. So I've been fiddling around, and I believe the closest that I can get to the look and feel of the actual race number font is Seago UI black. And from a size perspective, size 380, so a massive font size. Click somewhere in the square and put in your, before you do, hit italic and put in your number whilst clicking again in the square. It's white, so I'm going to come back. I'm going to switch from white to black. I'd forgotten about that, and retype in black. Okay, so this is close enough and good enough for me and neat enough. There's a little grab handle here so you can move the number around, and so this is really about looking at the left-right balance, the top and bottom balance, and make sure that you're happy with the way it looks, and then in effect let go. The moment you click away is the moment that those pixels have been drawn to the screen, and now I want to recreate 72 on the left hand side. Easiest way to do this is to use the selection tool and go and grab the 72. Copy it, so I'm going to do Control C this time, come to the 72 left hand label here and then paste it, and then move that across to this side. But obviously first of all what you need to be doing is getting rid of the number 12, or if you've made a selection that's bigger, that's fine as well. It's just painting over those pixels any which way that you want to. And then up to Marcus Adams. I wanted to keep this style where the capital, it's all capital letters. The J of John Doe is capital and is bigger rather, and the D is bigger. If you look at Chris Hoy's example, I actually prefer this, and most real Caterham racers have this, where the whole of their surname is a larger font. So I sort of replicated Chris Hoy a little bit more than John Doe. But starting off on the John Doe layer, I'm not using the Chris Hoy layer at all. Select and get rid of that. Hit the text button, and now we're going to type in a different font. So the font is Arial black, and the size that you want for the big writing is 84, and this is just my method for doing that. So 84, and I'm going to type in capitals, not in italic. Let me come back and deselect italic. In capitals, Marcus Adams. Don't worry that it's going over. So just drag this back and so it's sort of roughly fitting, roughly where you think it might be. And then I'm going to select out everything that is Arcus and just leave with the M and the Adams and get rid of that little black blob that I missed there as well. And then back to the text tool, and I'm changing the size down now to be 68. Coming back into roughly the same spot and typing the Arcus bit. I'm going to move that so that I'm lining it up with the M, and so it's looking neat. Come back and select the whole of Marcus. Moving the pixels is the top one of these icons on the right hand side. and I'm going to move that. I'm being rough and scrappy here. You can line this up and spend more time getting this perfect to roughly the right place. Selection tool again, now to select everything, and then I'm now going to move those pixels back so that my name is even, and deselect. Job's a good one. So that's my name and my race numbers, and I'm going to hit the save button. So the next step now is to get the files that we've modified out into the right format for Assetto Corsa to be able to ingest and comprehend. And that file format is DDS, which is a direct draw format, and it's very easy to save these files that we've just been updating to that DDS format. So let's have a go at doing that now. You can't do them all in one go. You can't do a save all and make them all DDS. So it's really one at a time. Let's start from the car file itself. So file, save as. And what I'm going to do, because I'm going to move across to my gaming PC in a minute and to Assetto Corsa, I'm on a different laptop at the moment, but I'm going to save these, and you can do this where you want. I'm going to save into my Dropbox so I can pick them up across on my other computer. I'm going to call this 72 test. Okay, so that's just at the root of Dropbox, and I am, instead of saving this out as a PSD file or as a PDN, a Paint.net file, you're coming and you're looking for DDS, Direct Draw Surface, and that's the file type that you want. When you hit the save button, it's going to recognize that file type is something that needs to be flattened. So you've got to make sure before you do this that you've got all of the layers selected that you want, and then click on Flatten. Now the gotcha here is that's flattened and saved out to that DDS file, but then it's also, this is the file that you're working on that now just has a single layer background. So that's the gotcha, is to sort of, the trick here now is to actually close down this file, because what you don't want to do is start editing again on this flattened layer. You're not now in the same sort of edit mode where this is just where everything is as one. So hover to that particular icon and just hit the close button and get rid of it. It saves you making a mess of editing something that isn't an edit layer structure really. Next one is the chassis cage. Let's do file, save as. I'm going to move to my Dropbox. I'm going to move to the test, and I'm going to change that to DDS. And just repeat this for every one of these files, and I'll be right back because I'm doing that now. Okay, and now as you can see, I've exported or saved all of those 5 files as DDS files. They're in my Dropbox, and Dropbox has already synced them. So it's time to move on to the next stage and do a test skinning of the car. Okay, so I'm now over on my gaming PC, and these are the 5 files from the Dropbox folder we need to now do something with to get them working in the game. So this is my Dropbox folder, and I'm going to move this whole folder, 72 test. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to then paste all of those, the whole folder, into the relevant skins location inside of Assetto Corsa. And this is quite a long-winded path. Its default installation directory is C program files x86, Steam, Steam apps, Common, Assetto Corsa, content, cars. You'll see the whole library of cars that you have installed into your game. You're looking for the Caterham 420R race car right-hand drive, then into the skins folder, and you end up with a series of folders that have the same kind of DDS files in that we have. So you're going to right-click and paste the 72 test folder into this location. Right, the next step then, I'm going to leave that window, I'm not going to minimize it, I'm just going to leave it open, floating around, so we can come back and have a look at that shortly. The next thing to do is to make sure that we have Content Manager, which is a free application. You can pay a little bit of donation money to get the full version, but you don't need the full version for this. It's a free application you can get hold of through Google and through racedepartment.com. It's a companion app that goes with Assetto Corsa. Many people use it even to start the Assetto Corsa app because it's a better interface in my opinion, and others. So what we have now is we're going into the cars location, so it's content menu at the top and then cars. We're finding the 420R race car, and you can see that it's already identified there's something wrong here. There's a broken livery link here that shows that it's test. And so what we're going to do as the first step is update previews, and that rattles through all of the folders, and it brings across everything that is in every one of those folders, including the new file, and it creates a preview image straight off the bat. So if we now go across to the broken link, we can see the preview file of our car. We can make sure that everything is okay with that. If we're happy, then we can move forward. If we're not, we can go back into Paint.net and make relevant sort of tweaks and edits, as I've previously discussed. So we're now ready to have a go at finishing the job off. And to be able to do that, first of all, we need to go into the skins folder to manage the skin, this skin in particular. And you can see we've got a warning error and an error message up at the top. So the first thing to do is to create a JSON file. This is the information that is recorded about the driver, the team name, the car number, that kind of thing, used to create the livery file and all of the relevant additional files required. Also useful if this skin gets out into the world of other people driving your car in AI mode and they're racing something else, they'll be racing against you. So this is assigning a driver name to this particular skin. So I'm going to create the JSON file. And I'm going to give it a driver name. Let's call this guy Miles Behind. And from Great Britain, team test team racing, let's call it, in capitals. Number 72, that's fine. Save that JSON file. I'll show you what that looks like in a second, and then click on change livery icon. It brings across the details from the JSON file about the number. It also, generally speaking, does a good job of looking at the car colors and giving you a half decent livery icon. You can make changes here if you want to and have different designs, but that's fine for me. And we're now in a position where we just need to come up to the top and name the car properly in terms of its race name. So team test team racing will do, and hit the save button finally. Now what that's done behind the scenes is it's just integrating with the skins folder and adding some additional information into 72 test. If we have a look in 72 test, you can see that we have all of the files that we had before, the 5 files. We've now got a livery PNG file, we've got a preview image, a JPEG image, and we've got a UI skin JSON file. And if I open that file up, you can see that it's just created that file for us without any effort, exactly in the format that is required for the game. That's all we need to do to package up all of our files. The final step is really to get these files across to the server and to PT Motorsport, and what they're looking for is in effect a zip of your 72, in my case this 72 test folder with these files inside of it, and the only other thing that they need is your community Steam ID, which is a long digit number, and it typically starts with a 7, and that then means that a server-side config file can be set up where we link your race car to you as an identity, which means that when you come in and race, you will automatically be assigned your specific livery skin and team details, which is what we're looking to do. That's the end of this video. Hope this was useful, and look forward to seeing you on a race circuit soon. Cheers.